The movie was good and heartwarming, and it had some really good moments that made me cry, moments that made me laugh, because I love the Beatles and I love their music. Not a gigantic Beatles fan, but some of their songs are what the movie says, some of the greatest songs ever written. So I'm a fan, not a huge fan, but a fan. So the movie was good until, like, the last 10 minutes, where it just went into this cliched Hollywood ending, this cliched, unrealistic Hollywood ending, where our protagonist, Jack, stands in front of Wembley Stadium, a crowd of, like, I think it's like 70,000 people that it can hold, and puts his love interest on the screen, says that he loves her, and that he didn't write this music, but the people he's naming who did write the music don't exist. So with, you figure, the internet and journalism, people can wonder what's going on with Jack. And the movie didn't address that. It would have been nice if the movie addressed, right after he apologized, what the fallout is. It didn't do any of that. Instead, it kind of like, it's almost like the producers of this film ran out of money in the middle of making it, and they had to clean it up really, really, really quick. So it would have been interesting to go this angle. You know, he does the apology, and, you know, and also his love interest, and I forget her name, and I'm terrible at remembering the character's name. Actually, let me look that up now. So his love interest, Ellie. It would have been interesting to see the fallout from that. He professes his love in front of her, but meanwhile, she's seeing someone else. In the movie, the guy's like, oh, well, I always knew that. You're cool, man. Go ahead. It would have been interesting to have some kind of tension. Maybe Ellie loved Gavin, or was really getting to know him and couldn't trust Jack going back and forth like this. Or couldn't trust Jack's motives. Or for whatever the circumstances are, it would have been interesting to see it from that angle. So it would have been interesting to see the fallout. It would have been interesting to see, you know, they tried to clean this up where, and I guess they could have said, well, it's an alternate universe and these kind of things don't exist, but Jack signed the music, probably had a deal with the record label where they kept some kind of rights of the music, so for him to upload the music for free, which, mind you can get music for free anyway, so the record company still would have made money through commercial use. They may have signed a deal, like a 360 deal, where they made money on merchandising, instead of just like, well, it's released for free, and now the greedy corporate interests can't have their hands on it. Now, it would have been interesting to go by the greedy corporate interest angle, because those things exist in real life, but they just kind of let it go. They kind of let it go, and then just fast forwarded to where he's happy, he has a regular 9-to-5 job, he has a wife and kids, and you know what? Fine, if that's what he really wanted and got it, that's cool, but at least make an argument for that. They never made an argument for this ending in the movie. They didn't. They just said, well, that's it, and here you go. And it's almost as if the movie sang, and this is what I'm speculating, that, you know, a regular 9-to-5 life is so much more gratifying than this extraordinary level of fame and artistry, writing some of the best songs in the world. Now, there is an argument for that. There really is, and I wish the movie would have explored it more. I wish the movie would have explored it, like maybe he could have done both. Instead of just singing in front of a group of kids, he could have released the new music on YouTube for free. He could have released the music for free, and, you know, and in the real world, somebody has to write the music. Maybe he could have said that John Lennon wrote it, you know, the real John Lennon, and that was a great scene. Could have given the money to John Lennon, or it would have been nice if the real Ringo Starr, George Harrison, or Paul McCartney made an appearance. Wouldn't it have been something to get... Ringo Starr's an actor. You know, he can't act. Wouldn't it have been something to get the real Ringo Starr in the movie, if that was possible? Or even the real Paul McCartney in the movie. So, again, the first 3/4 of this movie was really good. It was so cool. Like, what if the Beatles didn't happen, and all these other different things that didn't exist, and you know, how Ed Sheeran played himself to where, you know, Ed Sheeran's a hugely successful songwriter. Huge. But he doesn't compare it to the Beatles. And Sheeran knows this, and they express that in the movie. So to explore that, to explore the different levels of artistry and songwriting, would have been another direction to go. But instead, they just kind of cleaned everything up. They just kind of tied it all up in a bow, and that was it. And I wish they would have said something about the beauty of spreading this music. They didn't say what Jack did at the end. Okay, so he got a job and he sings in front of kids, but is that all he's singing in front of? I mean, is he releasing the music? They didn't really go into everything, and then it's just kind of like, well, everybody in the movie is fine. Everybody is happy. It's all a kumbaya movement. It would be nice if real life was like that. And sometimes I want movies to not be like real life, but I think this movie would have benefited for it to be more like real life. So it just seemed like it was too fast at the end, and it threw me off. I was, after leaving this movie with my friends, I went on a completely different rant. I've had a day to think about it. I saw it in the movie theater with friends, and after the movie, I was like angry. I'm like, I can't believe what they did. So thinking about it, I understand the positions they're trying to take. I just wish there would have been more of an explanation, more of an argument, or explaining the different sides of the motivations of the different characters, instead of like, this is what I want, okay, good, everything's great. And no, this is a guy who is in an alternate universe. He's probably scared out of his mind, and they kind of show that. I wish they would have had him bonding more with the people who actually knew what he was going through. How scary and alone that must be? Instead, they just made it one scene in the movie. That would have been something to explore. So, I think they explored the different songs well, and his process of quote-unquote writing it. But I wish they would have dove deeper on other subjects, on the characters' wants, the characters' motivations, why they want the way they want, instead of this is what I want and that's it. So again, like the 90% of the movie was so well done. I like Danny Boyle. I love Trainspotting. And Trainspotting, from what I remember of the first one, is one of those movies that it explored the different sides of addiction. It explored how great it makes people on heroin feel, but then it explores how awful it is and how destructive it is. And I think he explained that well. Now, ultimately, I wouldn't want anybody to use heroin because of the destruction of it. But it did something to where it explained why they do it and the places where they come from. And I wish he would have used the same kind of storytelling. Now, Danny Boyle didn't write the movie, but I wish, he kind of had the story, or maybe had some writers. I don't even know if Danny Boyle has this power to do it, but or at least the person who wrote it could have explored it with that, digging deeper, more meaning, more nuance. So even if the ending happens, and I don't necessarily agree with what Jack did at the end, at least explain why he did it, and then I could have understood. The way they explained it in the movie, I don't know if I agreed with it, because I easily could agree with what he wanted to do. I easily could agree with, settling down and living a stress-free, away from the allure and pressures of fame, which John Lennon ended up doing. He had to get away for a while. I think all the Beatles did, because it was so massive. They didn't go into the massive quality of the fame. They just kind of moved it along so fast. I wish that it would have stretched out to a couple of years. I wish they would have shown the evolution of Beatles music to the four mop-top guys to what they became with Let It Be. The evolution of the Beatles music would have been something. It would have been something to have Gavin as the George Martin, the Beatles producer-like character, starting out from humble beginnings and advising Jack on how to record things differently. I wish they would have explored that. I wish they would have gone more into there would have been a parallel to the Beatles, which would have been cool to explore. Instead, they just wrapped things up really quick, and didn't make an argument for what the character wants, whether you agree with what the character did at the end or didn't. So overall, it was good up until the end, and the ending kind of ruined the movie for me. I'm sorry to say. I did enjoy the songs. I love the placement of the songs. I love how, I forgot the guy who plays Jack. I love his original songs, like summer songs, just how painfully ordinary they were, and you can understand why people didn't like it. And then I like how he didn't have this. He has a very good voice, but it wasn't like, an extraordinary voice like what the people in the Beatles had, or wrote extraordinary songs like the people in the Beatles did. And they played that off so well. So I wish they just, again, would have explored it more. So anyway, if you want to explore this podcast more, feel free to follow me on Twitter. I'm at MMAM Podcast. On Facebook at MMAM Podcast. And you can email me at MMAMpodcast@gmail.com. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.